Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I was just reading through some articles, and it turns out that Donald Trump is now pushing out there into the mainstream media's attention about how it is that the Federal Reserve should be cutting interest rates, even though it was just a few days ago, like literally less than 2 weeks ago, that Donald Trump was communicating out there that the Federal Reserve was right to have paused interest rate adjustments. And it was only just a week before that that he was saying that the Federal Reserve should have cut. Now, what is it? Like, this is the confusion that I knew that they were going to be pushing out there into the economy, out there into the markets, to make sure that nobody knows exactly what it is that's going to be taking place going into the future when it comes to the forcefulness of what it is that the president can do, as opposed to what it is that is legally allowed, to what it is that the Federal Reserve doesn't even care about as far as the politics of it, and what it comes down to the interest rate adjustments, who is in charge and what it is that's going to take place, comes down to those bankers at the central bank. They're the ones who are they're the ones who are in charge of it. And so when I hear like how Donald Trump is demanding or pushing for or requiring that the Federal Reserve lower interest rates, he already knows, because he's already communicated that out there, that he doesn't have the power. The president doesn't have the power to make the Federal Reserve do anything. The Federal Reserve does not adjust their policy in accordance to what it is that the administration wants. They don't work like that. When you look at the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy going back literally decades, going back to an understanding that the Fed funds rate was eventually going to hit the lower bound of zero, that their communication became the ultimate tool. So to understand that if they can keep that interest rate adjustment open-ended, that now gives them the power to use their words to guide the markets. If they did not have that, if it was communicated very clearly, we are going to cut going into the future, not exactly sure how much, definitely required to happen, there would be an impact on the economy. People, the markets would then behave in a way as if as if those rate adjustments have already occurred, so that they can prepare for them. And then once the rate adjustment actually takes place, nothing really happens within the markets. They have already positioned themselves well in advance. This is how the Federal Reserve communicates their monetary policy. This is the communication of it. And by using the administration and their own position, saying, hey, we're going to wait and see, there's no hurry to cut, got to see what's going to go on with inflation, tariffs are impacting, the credible threat coming from the administration, from the possibility of creating an inflationary scenario, is now giving the Federal Reserve that ability to pause. Now, it comes down to the communication of what it is that they could possibly do, or what it is that the feeling of the people are getting, believing on what it is that's going to be taking place going into the future. And then if they do actually do the adjustment, how they communicate that rate adjustment, the reasoning behind it, will then have a profound impact on whether or not the people will feel an inflationary or disinflationary aspect from it. So if you have this idea that the interest rate adjustment was being done for a weakening economy, then that would have a disinflationary impact, as people would feel the recessionary powers from that. Regardless of what has taken place within the economy, the feeling that people have within it would then create that scenario. However, if that interest rate adjustment is delivered with the message that this is a systematic operation, just trying to be in a regular kind of style with what it is that the markets are needing, but not necessarily doing it out of market weakness, then that would have an inflationary expectation behind it, as people would then see the lowering of interest rates being the inflationary pressure. So again, depending on how the message is delivered, you think about it, just recently when we had the half a rate point cut, Think about how that impacted the markets. Excuse me. When we had a half a rate point cut, it was delivered with information that said that this was an emergency, that it was even within the Fed, there was descendants, like they didn't all agree with this. Like, did they need that much? Is the market that bad a shape that they needed a half a rate point cut? People felt that as being a weakening in the economy. Now, in that in itself, you think about the very first rate cuts had a very deflationary, not necessarily deflationary, disinflationary, like the inflation wasn't running rampant from that half a rate point cut. It was falling. Right? The inflationary expectation. But then the next two rate cuts were delivered with a very kind of casual aspect to it, and that it wasn't for market weakness or any of that, kind of belief going behind it. And then it had an inflationary expectation built behind it. There was an example of it taking place just over the last pretty much year. So as I think about what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing going into the future, and I think about what it is that the administration is trying to communicate out there, I think these two work together. They work together symbiotically, not in the communication of it, like when you listen to them, that doesn't sound like they're working together. But when you think about how the Federal Reserve is looking to stand still and have the neutral interest rate meet them. Like they're trying to get to neutral, but if neutral finds them and they don't have to do anything, that's just as good. And if the only way that you can really raise the neutral interest rate is to have an elevated inflation expectation, Donald Trump is serving the purpose. I mean, he's got it going with tariffs, with threats, with all kinds of credible threats in every different direction. I mean, from within the government action, the employees within the government taking action in there to all the way to, threatening other countries with all kinds of stuff. Like every bit of this has a very inflationary pressure behind it, as people believe in the idea of supply chain breakdowns and things becoming more expensive as the imports go up from the tariffs, from the added costs. So as this begins to take place and it raised the neutral interest rate, the Federal Reserve is sitting back there going, we didn't have to do really anything. We were just sitting around kind of just talking, not really doing much. And then the neutral interest rate begins to rise, gets ever closer to the Fed funds rate. And if it's becoming ever closer, lowering the gap between the where the neutral interest rate is positioned and the Fed funds rate, if that gap begins to shrink, that's less restriction upon the economy and things start to look better. It's actually counterintuitive to what a lot of people would believe, thinking that the economy would deteriorate. But ultimately, what it's going to do is raise the inflation expectation, raise the neutral interest rate, regardless of what happens with tariffs or anything else out there. Then what you will find is less restriction on the economy. People will look around and say, why is it so resilient? I mean, to me, this all makes sense when I start breaking it down, understanding that this was something that they set into motion literally 20 years ago. Right? More than 20 years ago. I mean, we're talking, what was that Ben Bernanke speech with the gold machine was in 2020, 2001, right? November of 2001 or 2. Anyway, it doesn't matter, right? 23 years ago, right? They talked about the Fed funds rate eventually hitting the lower bound of zero, essentially making their monetary policy ineffective because they would no longer be able to adjust interest rates through the Fed funds rate. And they said, that's okay. We got plenty of tools out there. Let me tell you about this gold machine. Right? And this is exactly what the Federal Reserve is now using, is this same idea, this hypothetical gold machine, and how producing gold with an unlimited amount of capabilities from very little cost or resources going into it, then the price of gold on the market would plummet. Well, same thing if you are telling people that you are about ready to go out there and buy a bunch of corporate debt. You set up this lending facility that was never allowed to exist unless there was unusual and exigent circumstances, such as that as the COVID pandemic. And during that time, you set up a special purpose vehicle, fund it with hundreds of billions of dollars, give mass attention to it through the mainstream media that the Federal Reserve is about ready to be picking the winners and losers. And the mainstream media's attention to that then has people, the market, front running the Federal Reserve, buying up that corporate debt those corporations were able to fund themselves. This is how they operate. They don't need to bail out the corporations. They have gold machine. They have credible threats. They have unusual and exigent circumstances at times. This is how they are doing it. They don't need to go over there. People get pissed when they hand them money. They don't need to hand them money anymore, right? All you have to do is just set up this special purpose vehicle, say that you're going to be buying a bunch of corporate debt, and the people will fund the corporations themselves. This is why we don't experience the recession like a lot of people were anticipating. You see all these bank collapses and corporations going bankrupt, and you're thinking, man, this is a recession. Why isn't it taking place? It's because they had prepared themselves for it. Right? The recessionless recession. They knew it was coming. And as much as people don't want to believe that the Federal Reserve actually knows what they are doing, think about it. It's still in operation today. Right? Tomorrow, they're going to be in operation. And as much as we want to believe that they have failed as much as they have, that exact belief is the reason why they are able to actually get away with what it is that they are doing. If they didn't have the inflation expectation elevated amongst the markets out there, they never would have been able to get away with this. Without the inflation, they would have failed miserably. Go look at some of the things that they talked about. John Williams describes it very well in Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. That today we face, this is him talking in 2018. All right, November 21st, 2018, John Williams' speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. And he describes it in there, and he says that today we face an altogether different set of problems stemming from a very low neutral interest rate. That is the short-term interest rate that is consistent with an economy operating at its potential alongside low and stable inflation. The problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. The problem we need to solve today is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. Now that they got the high inflation, now that they got the neutral interest rate on the way up, now that they got their Fed funds rate in a position in which that they're actually getting their ammunition back, they're in the background giving each other high fives while we're over here feeling the pain. People look at me and they say, dude, why are you supporting the Fed? I'm not. I'm describing exactly how the Federal Reserve inflicted this pain upon you, warned you that they were going to do it, and now have succeeded in gaining their ammunition back so they can continue on with their power. Yeah. It's not, I mean, if there was truly a way to end the Federal Reserve, this is the way you would do it. You would have to understand that they are using their credible threats, using their words to guide the markets. And because it works so well, there's no way that everybody is going to then fall in line with the idea that they are using the credible threats. They look at those interest rate adjustments as the only possible tool. And because of that, they will never be able to see the credible threat. And therefore, they can continue on with the power. That's just the way it works. How long are we into this? 13 minutes into this video. All right, I'm not sure how long I'm going to go for, but 175 people with 30 people watching. Got Brody. I'm just going to cruise up here. Brody says, hit the like on the stream, stream please, everybody, because this will make the YouTube share it more widely so we get more interesting questions in here. Thank you so much. Chuck says, it's a theoretical, okie dokie. Okay. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, you bet. So, okay, I'm not reading Chuck's there. Let's see. Kirk, the real question, who liked the halftime show? Didn't watch. All right. Larry says, Chuck, the main, let's see here. The main point of the channel is the credible threat theory. If you'd, yeah. Wait, okay, well, Okay, hold on here. Let me read some of Chuck's. I thought it was the Cantillon theory. Are you just trolling? Right, Brody? It's pointless. I mean, if you're just trolling, if you really want to know what's going on here, and you want to understand what's happening within the monetary policy, then you have to break down those speeches yourself, right? I mean, I'm doing the best I can. Like, I sit there and I read through literally thousands of documents to bring to you a handful of them that will then describe what it is that has taken place in the most efficient way I can possibly describe it, because it is probably one of the most complicated things you could ever internalize. Now, if you don't appreciate what it is that I have done, get out of here, right? Go find another channel, man. I mean, I really care less if you're here or not. But if you want to learn and you want to understand what it is that's happening here, and you want to share your understandings with us and maybe some of your ideas on what it is that you can do to advance yourself and do better in life, then please join in, right? In fact, this is the people that I'm looking for. Otherwise, get out, man. I mean, appreciate to the BS. Go away, right? I mean, Chuck, just go find someplace else to be. All right. Chicken Life, thank you so much for the $4.99. Don't have time to hang out tonight. Please, Simon, please check for an email from me or a meetup in the near future. Hey, right on, man. I will do check that. Thank you very much for the $4.99 and for being here as long as you have, bro. All right. Understanding macroeconomics isn't pointless. The information only has value you can extract. Don't let Chuck dominate this conversation. All right. Just let him be. All right, Carl, if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, that's bad too. Got to get a fixed rate, even if it sucks a bit at first. Yeah, well, that sucks because we have high interest rates, so you really don't have much of a choice. But if you are in a position right now where you do have an adjustable rate mortgage, it's very confusing to think about the Federal Reserve lowering rates and this doing better for you when then you see the mortgages actually go up in price, then that doesn't really make any sense because it's working opposite of what it is that most people would have anticipated. Now, again, when you think about some of the economic indicators that are now broken, when you think about things that are working backwards from what it is that people would have anticipated, mainly like interest rates go up and house prices come down. Well, that didn't happen, right? Federal Reserve cuts rates and mortgage rates will come down. That didn't happen. 10-year, two-year inversion, inverted yield curve goes back to a steepening yield curve, and that predicts a recession. Didn't happen. Some rule didn't happen. Like, all these things didn't happen like everybody had predicted. And I keep trying to explain it's because we're no longer operating in a way that the Federal Reserve had typically conducted themselves. However, since nobody knows that, nobody realizes that, and everybody is so stuck on interest rate adjustments, they are able to get away with it, and then people could scratch their heads wondering why it is that it's so confusing on comparing like the way they had done things, the way they knew the Federal Reserve and the history that they've had with it. It doesn't make sense. They are no longer operating in that same capacity. Like, I guess a good way to put it is like, you ever had a girlfriend who all of a sudden just changed the way that they are acting? And you knew, it's like, man, we're still in this relationship, but man, you're not acting the same way. We're not, like, things are messed up here. What's going on? Right? Same thing, right? You just don't, you don't realize that the underlying thing has already, but on the surface, it looks the same, right? But it's not. That's sort of what's going on here, as people have this relationship expectation with the Federal Reserve that says, when you cut rates, I'm expecting certain things to take place within the economy, and then they don't happen, and they say, what the hell's going on here? And meanwhile, the uneducated economist is saying, did you hear what they were describing during the time of the interest rate adjustments? Because that was the tool. That description, the way it was received by the market, not the interest rate adjustment itself. That was the communication, right? But that wasn't the profound impact. Think about it. Donald Trump has said, cut rates, don't cut rates, right? And he did this within 3 weeks. I got the articles down in the description. Like, literally, these articles are 3 weeks apart, right? So if you adjust the interest rates at the Fed funds level, it takes 6 months to a year before that impacts the economy. Are you telling me 3 weeks ago it was okay, then it wasn't okay, then it was okay? when it takes literally 6 months to a year before you find any kind of impact from it. This is not because he is confused about why you would want to cut rates or keep interest rates. That's not it. He is trying to communicate a confusion out there so people have no idea what is going on, so then they can use the power of their words to then guide the markets. This is why it's happening the way it is. We can add complications to it. That's fine. Like, I mean, you can add, well, what about these people in this other country causing these chaos and all this other stuff that's going on? Yeah, right? All that stuff is all part of it. But the grand scheme of it is that the underlying issues that the Federal Reserve was facing was the fact that they were suffering through a low neutral interest rate, and it made their monetary policy ineffective. That's the point. And with an ineffective monetary policy tool, they went, okay, let's take the ineffective monetary policy tool. We're going to set it right here for a second. And now we're going to have to come up with a new tool. What is it? Communication about that thing. That's what the new tool is. We're going to communicate about this thing, and then that will be the thing that's guiding markets. And if we are able to do it well enough, tell the story well enough, and convince people with logical sense and credible threats, then they won't notice that we haven't been able to use the interest rate adjustments for an effective monetary policy tool for some time. You think about it. They had it at, okay, here's a good way to think about this. Think about how quickly they raised them. They raised rates faster than like in a rocket ship. You know why? Because they didn't work. And if they were sit there to try and incrementally move them, then we would notice that, hey man, these things are not functioning the way that they normally had. But because they shot them up like a rocket, they were sitting there at zero for the longest time, and then they're sitting here elevated for the longest time, with no real adjustments taking place in between, but a quick shot, right? Recession kicks, boom, down to zero. No adjustments, just a quick shot, right? Then it gets to a point where it was like, oh, we're going to elevate them. Boom, quick shot, right back up again, right? Because the interest rate adjustments aren't the effective tool, but the communication about it is. So now that we have the communication about an elevated interest rates buried deep within the markets, it'll start conducting itself as if those rate cuts have happened, even though it takes 6 months to a year. Think about it. The moment that the Federal Reserve started talking about raising interest rates, mortgage rates started to move. People said the Fed was broken. They said the Fed has lost control. Mortgage rates are moving without the Federal Reserve doing anything at all. It was because of the communication. They had... Are we back? Oh, okay, cool. But they communicated it well in advance. They said it. We are going to cut rates. We are going to raise rates. We are going to do this going into the future. And when they talked about raising rates, that started to impact the mortgage market, and it started to elevate the mortgage rates ahead of the Federal Reserve. People did not know it was the credible threat that was doing it. They assumed that the Federal Reserve was broken, and I tried to explain it at the time that they were not broken, because if they were broken, they wouldn't be here today, still inflicting the pain and misery upon the people. And here I am describing it, and I know a lot of people look at it and say, dude, why are you on the Fed's side? I'm not. I'm trying to show you how it is that we can destroy the Federal Reserve. But, I mean, it's only 222 people watching right now, and that's okay. Because the 222 people who are watching right now, who are getting this message, are the ones who are now going to recognize it when they are looking out there at the news, when they are seeing the communications taking place, and you are going to agree, yes, these credible threat theories are absolutely accurate. It's totally working in the Fed's favor. The elevated inflation expectation, it raises the neutral interest rate, it makes the economy less restricted. Donald Trump can scream it all day long, tariffs, 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 war, 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 pain, pain, misery, and elevated inflation expectation makes the economy less restricted and actually makes for a good economy. You can say, look, I won. Yay me. All right? And so I'm sitting around going, dude, you use credible threats, and it worked in your advantage. And if we see this actually taking place the way it is, how else can you describe it? I mean, not only that, but I described this literally a year ago. Like, there is a great video that I had done where I took out my little, paper pad, and I drew out this nice little sketch talking and showing about how the neutral interest rate was going to rise, making the economy less restricted, and people are going to wonder why it is that we have such a robust economy. And to me, it was like it's pretty obvious. If you have an elevated inflation expectation, you're going to raise the neutral interest rate and the Fed sits still, then that's going to create less restriction, which is going to be awesome for the economy. And this is exactly what we are experiencing. It doesn't have anything to do with Trump. I mean, except for now with the message that he is delivering. But even he can't really deliver a good message about interest rate cuts, considering that he is like flipped, within 3 weeks what it is that he believes that the Federal Reserve should be doing with interest rates. However, he does a great job of delivering the credible threat of tariffs and pain and misery and impact to the people and stuff like that, regardless if he actually does it. Yeah. It's just the idea alone is enough to do the job. All right. Hodl, thank you so much for the $4.99. Love the video yesterday. Really helped connect the dots. Much appreciated. Oh my gosh, bro. I can't even remember which one we did yesterday. I do so many videos now. I can't even remember. What did we talk about yesterday? I remember at one point we were talking about the repo facility. That was pretty good. Like very few people, like a lot of people get all worried when they see stuff that has taken place. They're like, oh my God, did you see what's going on at the repo facility? It's like it's dumping out liquidity like fast, man. There's like, it's almost like empty. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, prior to 2019, that repo facility wasn't really in operation anyway. They talked about having it as a standing repo facility. In fact, I did a video. I should have brought that up in yesterday's video. I did a video called Things Are Changing. Right? That's the title of the video. Things are changing. It was one of the earlier videos I had done describing the repo facility and the Federal Reserve wanting a standing repo facility. It turned out just a few months later or a year later, bang, here it is. We got the standing repo facility. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, they were talking about that a while ago. Like they wanted that thing up in operation, like they're not to be just a pressure relief like it was. Right, because that's what it was prior to 2019, September of 2019. It was just like this facility that would be there just in case of liquidity issues, just very much like what the banking system was experiencing that day. Right, and so for a lot of you who don't know, in September of 2019, there was a liquidity issue that had hit the big banking system. So anyway, the Federal Reserve opened up the repo facility, and from that point on, it's been kind of in operation. And as the liquidity is now being drawn away from the repo facility, a lot of people say, well, this is going to cause a liquidity crisis within the banking system itself. And I don't believe that for a little bit, because again, the Federal Reserve has communicated that they want the discount window, which is basically the a place that they could go to get the liquidity. They want the discount window up in operation. So, and not to have a stigma attached to it. So they are understanding that the repo facility is going to eventually be depleted and that their banking system is going to have to go someplace with their liquidity or find themselves inside of a limited reserve system again, in which that the repo facility wouldn't even be needed. Like I don't know how many people look at it this way. Like I just kind of look at it like kind of backwards, like the way most people look. Because I think about it the way that the Fed used to operate and think about the way that they operate now. Like almost as if you got like two different operating systems, right? But they're not necessarily doing the same tasks, right? At the end they kind of perform the same outcome, but they don't work the same way anymore. And I mean, I know that's kind of confusing to think about it, but really, when you think about how it is that the communication is the most important tool, the words that they use, how they use them, what it is that you believe from the impact of the action, because the action is less critical. Like if the action was more important than the message, then they could just not deliver the message, just deliver the action, right? And not say a word. And then people will be like, hey man, you just surprised the hell out of the markets with the shock and awe event of an interest rate adjustment. Well, if that was the important tool, then that's what they would do. But the important tool is not that, it's the communication about it, because that's what they are delivering to you. You see the difference inside of it? Like if the communication wasn't important, then they wouldn't use it. All they would have to do. In fact, there was a time when they didn't. They said that it was better to shock the markets with an interest rate adjustment than it was to communicate about it. Then they found that if they communicated about it, they could get more power out of it. And then they realized, well, hell, we can communicate about it and just have all the power in the world. It doesn't matter what we do with the interest rate adjustment so long as the people believe that we are going to do it. And then that has a profound impact on the economy. Way different from what anybody else is going to say, right? Everybody else sees it differently. And I'm not making this up like I have some delusional belief. This is from their own words. This is from the documents that I have found. You want to see them? Go and become a member of the channel. It's literally cost you $1. $1 a month. You'll have access to all the members only videos that we have done breaking all this stuff down. And I break them down even pretty regularly, even today, like not recently. And I'm sorry guys for all the members. I will be breaking down some more speeches in the future, but the ones that we are finding right now are not nearly as important as the ones that I have found from the past. Those ones are describing, I mean, incredibly well what it is that we are experiencing here. The Federal Reserve strategy is not anything close to what the mainstream media has communicated. It's not even close. Nothing could be further from the truth. Cannot believe how many times I have found evidence of them straight up misunderstanding the strategy coming from the Fed, communicating that in a very incredibly how do I even describe it? These are economic professors from universities and stuff that they are interviewing who are misguiding the markets, misguiding the people, misguiding everybody. I mean, literally 99.9% of the people are missing it. I have never really found a single video or article that even comes remotely close to describing monetary policy the way I do. And I'm describing it out of their own words, out of the Fed's own words. This isn't something like I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you about this research that I found, and then I'll describe the research that I found. I give you my opinion on it, but then I share exactly. I mean, I'm using their words, saying, hey, this is what they said right here. Boom, right? Moderately above 2% for some time with no mathematical formula for figuring it out. This is not what I said. This is what they said. I don't know why anybody else doesn't want to pick that up and run with it. It's a pretty profound statement. We are going for 2%, moderately above 2% for some time with no mathematical formula for figuring it out. How it is that people did not flip their freaking mind over that is beyond. I mean, I know I did when I saw it. I'm like, guys, look, this is going to be all over the place. People are going to figure this out. This is cutting edge news. And now here it is, 4 years old. Nobody cares. Literally nobody cares. Everybody was just like, bruh, it's a 2% target. Duh. And I'm thinking, you fell right into their trap. Straight up. And I'm thinking everybody did. 99% of the people have done that. And I'm like, well, okay, good luck, spreading the credible threat theory enough to actually end the Federal Reserve. So I just take it to the advantage that it is in knowing that since 99% of the people have missed it, right, don't understand it at all, that gives me the ability to position myself in a way that they cannot possibly do. They can't. All the meaning of the information that they give could not possibly incorporate the credible threat theory into it if they don't know what it is. So therefore, they are going to blame politics. They are going to blame environment. They're going to blame social aspects of, whatever. But they will not be able to truly understand what it is that's taken place because the Federal Reserve was managed to keep it a secret. And I don't know how the hell they did it, considering that they literally came out and told everybody. I mean, even just recently in the report to Congress, within the first, page of it, they are saying we are the appropriate monetary policy is seeking to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. And then they turn around, so the Fed's 2% target, and I'm like, the 2% target? That's slightly above 2%? That's the target you're talking about? Moderately above 2% target? Because nobody gets it. Let's check out this other super chat. We got Will. Thank you so much with the $5, man. How do you think the mortgage market will be impacted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac forced to go private again? Powell even commented on that today. It's hard to understand a lot of these things that are going to take place within the mortgage market. Ultimately, I would like to see me do a little bit more research on what it is that is actually happening from it and taking place. So I can't even really give you an honest answer on that. Thank you for the $5, but I'm not going to bullshit my way through, through the comment on it, or as far as creating a comment or an answer for you until I actually have all the information and really want to know what it is that's going to be taking place within the economy. See, like even people ask me, dude, what's going to happen with the tariffs on steel? What's going to happen with and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I got to see what the tariff is going to be. I mean, we had a 14% tariff on lumber like, 6 months ago. Nobody cared then. So when, we got a 25% tariff, we want to make a big deal out of it or not, because a few months ago, nobody really even batted an eye. And that's just the thing that I found, like with most of the stuff, it's like, almost everything now is being used as a credible threat. Like if they have the availability of it, then they're going to use it. There's no point in delivering a message without power behind it if they have the ability to use the power behind it. Right. And so this is what we end up finding a lot more within it. Like all this stuff, like, you know, especially like everything. Everything seems to have like this credible threat behind it. It's not actually taken place. There are a lot of things that have taken place, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it establishes and proves the credible threat, very much like, say, the corporate debt lending facility actually did buy some corporate debt. But they had already, all the corporations had already pretty much funded themselves prior to those establishments even being up in operation. However, in order to keep that credible threat going, you have to do something that will then have the people's belief elevated. Very much like, I mean, even like the idea of opening up Gitmo to get, these illegal immigrants. Well, there's some pretty hardcore people that went there. And like, I mean, I don't think this is like necessarily a Gestapo level event that's happening, right? But it's going to be kind of scary for a lot of people who might be concerned about something of that nature. And then here it is, you have this kind of dramatic thing that's happening with these, hardcore criminals, and they're moving into Gitmo, and they're like, oh, so it's begun, and then, yeah, the credible threat is there, and they have actually done some stuff that is credible, right? But what's the reality of it? Are we going to continue on going deep into this to figure out how much they are actually going to do, or do we have to actually wait and see what they're going to do? Right? The credible threat of corporate debt lending facility had so many people out there believing that when the Federal Reserve bought that corporate debt, it was going to drive the yields down and the prices up. And it did that so well, that communication, that it actually occurred. And it didn't do anything. Right? See, this is how it's, I know it's confusing. It gets even, like, to try and even understand it makes it confusing. That's why it really is best to not have an external expectation, or have very little expectation of the external. Like, whatever it is, people are like, oh, he's going to come in and ruin your life. And I'm like, not if you don't know about it. Only if you give it that meaning. And people are like, no, it's going to happen. It's going to ruin your life. And I was just like, no, I understand that you think it's going to ruin my life. Right? I don't believe that. And therefore, it's probably not going to happen to me like it's going to happen to you, because you're going to position yourself in a way that it does ruin your life. All right? Because your ego wants to be right. And your ego will then push you into doing things that then make sure that it is right, even if it is self-inflicting pain and damage. And aha, showed you, right? All right, why does the Fed exclude inflation on most critical items, excluding housing? It doesn't matter. It really, to be honest with you, I don't even know why they even talk. I mean, they just gives them a talking point to go about, because inflation, the way they use it today, is not even the way that it is done years ago. So, like, to me, it doesn't really matter. They can just make it up. In fact, they probably do. So I know that's kind of like harsh to hear. and maybe like a little discrediting or disheartening of something of that. But just understand that the Federal Reserve is using their information, not the stuff that we want them to use. Like I want them to look at the unemployment numbers for real, not the unemployment numbers that they talk about. But since I'm not in charge of the Fed, I'm not in charge of monetary policy, and I'm not in charge of the way that they look at inflation or unemployment numbers or anything else out there, in turn, I have to then not give that expectation that they should be doing something or something different or whatever. That's not the expectation I give them. The expectation is now on me to say, okay, what is it that they are looking at, regardless if it's right, wrong, or indifferent? And then how are they going to react to that information that they are looking at? Because that's the important thing. That's what I have to now look at in order to decide what it is that I need to do, right? I mean, I've said this before. We can wish, hope, dream, and pray that they conduct themselves in a different fashion. They won't. They never will. I don't care how many times you threaten to sue them. I don't care how much money you throw at it. I don't care all that other stuff. I think it's a wonderful idea to attempt to audit the Federal Reserve. I think it would be fun to see that happen. Great. It's not gonna work, right? The only thing that can really actually take out the Federal Reserve is to understand the credible threat theory and then not let them use it. And that is going to be impossible because 99.9% of the people don't see it. All right. So again, unless people want to pour over 1,000 speeches and documents in order to pick out the ones that I have found, or you can listen to the Uneducated Economist, figure it out, learn it, share it with your friends. I mean, I find other people are now starting to do videos for like the Cantillon effect, right? Like there's people out there who are now doing Cantillon videos that are like really good, right? Because like they edit and they put in graphs and they show all kinds of stuff, and so it's really awesome and fun to watch. They're very entertaining, but to understand it's the power, the economic power that is now underneath everything. Like the entire economy has these economic forces that are at play, and to understand how those things work is the ultimate of it. Whether the video that resonates with you gives you that information, so if it's entertaining and it's fun to watch and all that other stuff, hey, that's great, man. I mean, I hope you get the information. I'm spreading the information because I know it's important. I'm not going to try and dress it up. I'm not going to try and dazzle it. I can't do any of that stuff. I don't have the time, right? But I do have the time to share what it is that I am seeing, what it is that I am researching, what it is that I am learning. And it has been an hell of an experience. And considering that I know that this understanding of monetary policy is by far the most accurate because everybody else thinks the Fed got it wrong. I'm the only one who said the Fed got it right. And I'm not saying they got it right, that they did the correct thing. I'm saying they got it right in accordance to what it is that they said that they were going to do. And that's where I think a lot of people miss it. They're trying to get to this 2% target. They can't. And I'm like, because that's the mainstream media's interpretation of it. And that's the thing that they are using against you. Straight up. Every time you hear that on a mainstream media, you can just think, if you hear the word 2% target, the entire paper is propaganda. Every single word that comes out of it is complete BS propaganda. I don't care. If you hear it out of another YouTuber, they're trying to get down to a 2% target. Propaganda. Or they're just completely misinformed. One of those two things. It's either propaganda or they are completely misinformed. And I hate to say that because I know a lot. I mean, I literally hate to say that because I know that there is a bunch of YouTubers out there who are my friends who are saying that. I've shared this credible threat theory at the Rebel Capitalist. I've shared it many times here on my videos. I've shared it at other conferences. I have shared this. This is my belief. I have not deviated from it. Okay? Now, whether they agree with me or not, that's neither here nor there, but I am not agreeing with anybody else when it comes to the understanding of this monetary policy. I got it better than anybody else has. And I don't mean to be bragging it because that's not the way I want to be. I'm not cocky about it. What I am trying to show you guys is that there is evidence of what it is that I am saying in detail, described from the Federal Reserve. And it is unlike anything that you are finding on the mainstream media. Period. All right, 44 minutes into it. I got to call it quits here soon. All right, Jerome said he would welcome any opportunity to speak to everyone from scholars to UE. Don't miss the chance, Simon. Yeah, that would be fun. All right, because I would be asking. I would be like, okay, man. So in August of 2000, this is literally the question that I would ask him if he was sitting right in front of me. I'd be like, okay, in August of 2020, you did a speech talking about how the new monetary policy was going to work, and since the Federal Reserve had conducted themselves at the effective lower bound for so long, and the neutral interest rate had fallen, you were looking to actually raise the neutral interest rate. Now, in that speech, you had stated that the Federal Reserve was seeking an appropriate monetary policy of above 2% inflation target, above 2% inflation target, which no longer makes it a target because you're now aiming above it, shooting for above it, right? Since now that is what you are looking for with no mathematical formula for figuring it out, how long is it that you plan on going before you actually describe that to the people, since you're keeping that part hidden, right? That's it. That's the only question I would need to ask him, because it would raise such a stink amongst the people. It would be like, what the hell is he talking about? That they would actually have to be forced to go do the research. His answer would be pointless. It doesn't matter what his answer is. I just need to ask him the question. And I need everybody to hear the question. You know? I could probably come up, if I had a chance to really think about it, I could probably word it so perfectly that he would just be there shocked with nothing to say, because I would have already answered it within the question itself. Right? That's how that literally, that's how confident and sure I am of this. Like, I would go up against anybody. I don't care who they are. I would debate anybody on stage, anywhere, anytime when it comes to describing monetary policy. I would do that. In fact, I would be honored. I would be honored to do something like that. Especially, coming from some of these people who think that I'm just completely, delusional, batshit, or whatever. Those are the people I would love to talk to most. I would love to just show them exactly in every single speech, every single document. It was just like, I don't have to, I don't even have to know it. I just have to know where to find it, because it's all right there. It's all written in their own words. So people will say, well, what about this? I'd be like, hold on, let me get it right here. Michelle Bowman. Right? It's just like, right here, their communication's more important. Here, let me find the speech for you right here. This is where, Phillips Jefferson was saying it right here. Boom. And so I wouldn't even have to answer any questions. I could just point at the speeches and just say right there, boom. You know? uh, um, Gold bugs are about to get already a run on gold at the bank, England. That's a joke, kids. It's a smoke and mirrors. Hey, UE, have you heard about the CME group having liquidity issues? They run future options, market liquidity specifically in equities, and drying up. Do you know what can come from this? Thanks. Okay, Nielsen 357 sounds very much like a short position that may have been taken, and that say, for example, the short position that is now within silver, all the paper contracts out there. And essentially, if people were to cash in those paper contracts and start buying the silver, there's not nearly enough silver in the storage facilities that is out there. So these are the type of issues that a lot of people talk about. Well, I was exposed to something like that when I was believing that to be the case, when I was following Max Kaiser and his belief that we were going to be able to crash JP Morgan by buying silver, and their silver short position that they had taken out. Anyway, none of it happened. So all this stuff, like like GameStop and Nvidia and all these other things, I give them I put them really low on my, oh, I don't know how to put it, on my importance. Is that a good way of putting it? Because it never seems to play out the way that I had always got the credible threat from it would, right? So again, it's just like a lot of these things that are happening out there, I kind of take them as the symptom of the overall bigger problem. right? Because like a lot of people want to know, it's just like, man, what is it that we can do out here? What is it that we can do to fix the system? What is it that we can do to try and make it better, a better way, better future for our kids, all this other stuff, like all these hope and dreams, right? And I totally get it. Like I wanted, I want a better life for my kids. I don't want them to, be raised in, misery or pain or anything like that. Like that doesn't sound pleasant, right? So I think to myself, it was just like, well, the problem that we face nowadays is that the economy is cyclical, right? It's not something that is a constant. And that's where I think a lot of people want it to be a constant. They're like, no, man, my life, degree, career, constant career, right? Retirement, like constant. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well, you can be constant, but everything else around you's not, right? And so you can be in that constant state of career chasing and believing that that is the way that is going to work. And there was a time that was correct, right? So understanding that things change and that the constant that people think, okay, well, we can constantly go get a degree, go get a career, and be able to live out our lives with a house and wife and kids and retirement and all the other stuff, and that capability will be constant is not capable. It's not possible, right? Now, the acquiring of those things is always constant. How you get there is not. And that's important. See, a lot of people say, no, if you go to college, you get the degree, you do this step, success, right? Every single time. It's the roadmap for success. And then people go and try and do that, and they're like, dude, it didn't even come close. Right? And like, it was just like, yeah, because I could see that being the case a long time ago when I was told, like, hey, you need to go to college and get a degree. And I'm like, I could barely graduate high school. You expect me to go to college? Are you nuts? Like, that ain't going to happen. Now, all these other people who I did see to go to college, I'm like, all of you? Every one of you is going to go get a degree. While I'm going to work and I'm getting experience, you're going to get a degree. Experience, degree. Lack of experience, lack of degree. Huh. Which one is going to be worse off for you later on in life, right? The guy who has the experience, who's now competing for a job against people who have in a sea of degrees. Everybody has a degree, but nobody has any experience. Well, the one guy who actually stuck out, right? Who stuck it out in that career from the early days, sweeping the floors, working his way up into the sales position, sales manager, managing the store, right? Eventually regional manager, whatever it is that he needed to do, never once ever took a college course to get there. And then you got all these other people out there who have all these degrees. They're swimming against a bunch of other people who have degrees, and it doesn't make them stand out in any way, shape, or form. Now, there was a time getting a degree did. That was wonderful. If you go work summer job, work flipping burgers, and you go and pay for that college degree, now you had something that stood out. Awesome, right? Something that benefited you. Things change. You can't do it that way because nothing stays constant. If you have a constant new stream of college applicants who are coming in with degrees, how is it that you pick out the one that is going to be more awesome than the rest, since there is no degree that just sets them aside? All right. Let's see here. Then they close the store. Company goes bankrupt. Okay. Even still then, like I'll take that one too, right? And then the company goes bankrupt and whatever. Okay, been there, done that, right? 2 failed companies that I've worked for, documented one of them on YouTube, right? So I understand what it's like to see a company go down. I understand what it's like working for a company that goes into receivership and has, these so-called managers come in and take over and pretend like they know what they're doing. Like, I've seen it. I've seen it a couple of times. And now I'm quite well aware of how that process works. That's why I think it's funny. Some of the things like the sovereign wealth fund comes up, and I'm like, are you kidding me? God, man, it's just like those lumber yards I worked for, only different. However, since it's just a hypothetical thing, I'm not going to really look that deep into it until it actually happens. But the change in which that comes from that is absolutely the best thing that could ever possibly happen, even though it feels like probably one of the worst. In fact, everything that is ever bad that's ever happened to you probably taught you a lesson that you are actually respecting and love today. All right? And I know a lot of people are like, screw that. No way, man. I hate everything that happened to me. Okay, fine. That's the way you're looking at it. But I know I look at the things that happened to me and I think about some of the worst events that I look at, like especially ones that involve like family and stuff. I look at some of those things and I think, man, how bad of a situation that really was at the time and how upsetting and heartbreaking it was. And then I look back to it today and I'd be like, man, I would not be here doing this if that didn't happen. Like, I got to give it credit for where it is. If that didn't happen to me, if I didn't experience some of these things, then I would not be here doing some of the things that I am today. And those things that I know that had triggered me to be the person I am today were some of the worst behaviors that I had been conducting myself in. It was just like, dude, you deserve the pain and misery you got from the reason, from the way that you had been behaving. And when I learned that lesson, it was just like, man, did I learn the lesson? Well, years later, I look back and it was just like, well, I'm actually kind of glad that happened. I'm actually kind of glad I went through all that pain and misery and suffering, because if I didn't, then I would not be thinking and doing and behaving the way I am today. It would be somebody totally different. Okay? Embrace it. Embrace that company failure. I've worked for many company failures. Right? Not having any idea what it is I'm going to do. Losing my job going into recession, it's just like, are you kidding me? Right? And it got worse, like losing the house, going into depression, like all the bad stuff. People were like, dude, yeah, okay, great. If I didn't experience all that, the lost job, the foreclosure, all that other stuff, I would not be doing the Uneducated Economist today. So there is to it. All right. David, all them, and that's just getting started, Brody. Don't me with the good time. All right, they lost their jobs. Now they work cashier jobs at stores. It's hard even for people with STEM degrees. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm working a retail job. People are like, now they have to be a cashier. So, like, hey, that's me right here, right? I literally stand at a till. I ring up people's 2x4s. I go down and I put them in their pickup truck. That's what I do for a living. Right? Like I work a sales retail position job, very much like you would see at any other hardware store. It's not glamorous. Right? I also do that in one of the most expensive places you could ever possibly live in the country. With populations 10 to 50,000, Astoria ranks number 10 as the most expensive place to live. Right? Oregon has the highest cost of living. Our county specifically has one of the highest cost of living comparatively to that of rich states, like I forget, comparing it to like something, I don't know what rich state, New Hampshire or something like that. I forget what state it was that they had talked about the highest standard or cost of living. But my county ranks up there. I work a retail job and I have to compete against all the hospital district workers. I have to compete against the remote workers. I have to compete against all the people who are coming in and building these big commercial buildings for the Maritime Museum and for the hospitals and for all the apartments, like all these people who are coming in and getting paid for that. I have to compete against all that, and I have a retail job. You think I could do it with that alone? Hell no. You think my wife's job and my job alone could compete around here? Absolutely not. Never would happen. Not in a million years. All right? I would definitely be gone. I wouldn't be able to raise my kids in this wonderful, beautiful area that's safe and clean and friendly. I wouldn't be able to do it. If I wasn't chasing money through the efforts of calling bingo, of doing this YouTube, of doing all the things that I do, right? Then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing it. I couldn't. I just simply couldn't do it. Right? And so when I listen to people out there who talk about, oh man, how hard is it to make it? And I'm like, yeah, I know how hard it is. Right? I know exactly how hard it is. I knew it was hard when I was doing it. I'm like, man, it is hard out here. Right? And I'm thinking, I'm doing everything I can and I'm barely keeping up. I'm looking at people. I was like, how the hell are you guys driving those nice cars like that? Yeah, like I want to drive a nice car. I can't afford it. I'm buying a house. I don't know what the hell you guys are buying out there, but damn, that's a nice car, and I don't know how you're all doing it. And then I realized, damn, me, talking to myself, living in one of the most expensive places that you could ever possibly live, working a retail job. Yeah, all right, no wonder. So, Just understand it and get it for what it is. Just know that that's the case. I can't do it with that job. If I don't put out ever increasing amounts of more effort than everybody else around me, then I can't live here. I just can't. So I have to do more. When people are like, dude, why are you so cocky? Why are you doing so much? Why are you out there going all this other stuff? Why don't you chill out and relax? And I'm thinking the moment that I do that, I fail. Right? I can't do it that way. There's no that you can't, you know? And so here we are, right? People trying to figure out how it is that they make it in this world today. And I'm thinking it ain't easy, man. Everything that you could possibly do to try and figure out what it is that you can do to be useful, I think is probably the most important part, being useful. If you figure out how to be useful, then it's really kind of easy after that, right? You'd be useful at work. You'd be useful on YouTube. Be useful in ways of like just the universe, and the universe will begin to provide you with opportunity and exception. You know. All right. So the moment your YouTube fails, you fail. No, M. Reiner, I've conditioned myself in a much different fashion than that because I don't go out and buy brand new cars and trucks. The people who make fun of me for doing a video with a car with a saggy headliner don't seem to understand that if I lose my YouTube channel, I don't change. My life continues on. Does it get hard? You bet. Do I have to scramble for other ways? Sure do. Do I get to invest into Bitcoin and stocks and silver and extra house payments and stuff like that? Not if I don't have YouTube going on. But then that will also give me the opportunity to start pursuing excellence in other fashions, which is exactly what I would do during that time. If YouTube fails, I don't fail. I don't fail no matter what. All right, I am loss of all the income. It still doesn't mean a failure. It means it's opportunity for me to do something else. Is it going to hurt at the time? Damn right it's going to. Am I going to start losing assets that I've tried to acquire? Probably, if I don't hurry up and do something. But it's not a failure. It's opportunity. That's all it is. In fact, the world is nothing but abundance of opportunities. In fact, the world is nothing but abundance in every way. And if I was to fail, I would just look at it as an abundance of failure. I don't need any more failure in my life. In fact, I don't know if I could take on any more failure if I was to lose it all. Great, got an abundance of failure. Now let's go out there and look for an abundance of opportunity because that exists as well. Everything, all the time, exists everywhere all at once. Which is kind of funny, like that movie, right? And it's really, if you don't see it that way, then you will probably be limited. You'll probably be struggling and you'll probably have a hard time. But the moment that you don't feel it, you don't think it, and you don't know it any other way, it's all there. It's all in abundance. It's all everywhere constantly around you. You know? It's like I heard an analogy of somebody saying like sitting on a pot of gold and then looking around for the pot of gold. It's like, where the hell is that damn pot of gold? Meanwhile, you're sitting on it the entire time. You have been, right? It's always been you. There is nothing different from you or that person over there other than the thoughts and behaviors and actions that you have taken, your inner beliefs, your energy that you are carrying. That's the only difference. People were like, dude, it's amazing, man. You have this YouTube channel with 152,000 subscribers. You really broke down the barriers and, made this successful thing grow. And I'm thinking, there were barriers? I didn't know that. I mean, YouTube's free, right? Anybody can put a video. What barriers are you talking about? I don't know what barriers those were. If you don't know that there's barriers, then there's nothing to knock down, right? You don't have barriers to knock down because they didn't exist to you because you didn't know they were there, right? That's the same thing. People look at it as just like, I can't because of all these limitations. Oh, well, I didn't have those. You have those because you think of them. You think of the limitations. I didn't think of limitations. I didn't know there was limitations. As far as I knew, YouTube is the sky's the limit. That's the only thing I knew. We're like, you broke down barriers. I'm like, I still don't get barriers. What barrier? I didn't have a single barrier. Like, YouTube was free to sign up. I uploaded the videos. You can do it all the time. There's nothing like hard about it. I don't know. The barriers seem very odd. I don't know about barriers, And because I don't have barriers in my life, I don't have an abundance of obstacles to try and get around. Right? I don't create the obstacles. It's because I just don't know that they're there. I don't incorporate them into my beliefs or thoughts or realities. And I know that's really hard for a lot of people who do have that going on in their life. They're like, man, how do I not think about all the chaos in my life? And I'm like, yeah, I know. I used to do the same thing. Right. And I mean, I don't know how the hell I was able to get rid of it other than taking each and every single issue that I have ever had in my life every time it triggered me or got me angry and to try and dive down deep into my soul and ideas of who it was that I was being and grew up as to understand that there was an inner childhood problem that I was facing that needed to be solved. Once I did all that, it was just like, oh shit, the rest of this stuff is easy. Right? Like once you know that that's the problem that you are facing and why it is that you're getting mad about things, you just go and reflect upon it, think about it some, and let it go. And then all the opportunities are abound. Everything is abound. There's nothing nothing. The sky's the limit, right? On everything out there. People say, well, dude, how come you don't have $1 million? And I think about it and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to go through the effort of making the $1 million the way a lot of people think I should. Like, I'm thinking, what is it that you think I should do to get the $1 million? Like, I don't really like doing sponsorships, right? You know, I mean, they're okay. They pay good money. If there was the right sponsor, I'd probably do it, but it's not something that I really feel good about doing. I don't really have anything to sell. I'm just out here entertaining and talking and just babbling on. And, you know, I think to myself, if I can do this, share my ideas, share this information, be useful, helpful to people, in a time in which that they are very confused, and this helps them align some of their beliefs and understandings of what it is that's going on out there, that's the benefit. That's awesome for me. And if I can get rewarded through ad revenue or something, I'm finding this to be a very symbiotic relationship. I just love it. I just love it, and I don't see why it is that we need to change. I'm getting my bills paid. You guys are getting entertained. You guys are getting some information. I don't have to push, to try and make $1 million because I don't even know what it would be like to be in that push to make $1 million. I wouldn't be behaving like this. I wouldn't be doing these videos. I mean, I'd probably be doing videos, but it may not be like this. And it'd be something totally different. And so why change? I mean, I understand changing to adapt to the situation. What I'm saying is why change what it is that I am doing when what I am doing is actually putting me where I want to be. Get time with my family. I get to fly down to Vegas and hang out with Mike Zuber and All Nighter and Matthew and all the rest of the gang down there. Like these are like, this is amazing. This is amazing life. Like, why would I change that? I don't get it. I look at the reality of the situation. I was like, dude, this is about freaking perfect. Easy, right? Like, I mean, it's not easy. I have to come out here every day. I have to think. I have to, put it together. But it's not like editing videos. Like, editing videos takes time. It takes somewhat of a skill and creative imagination and stuff like that. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And so I think to myself, it was just like, yeah, man, you created the world that you want to live, right? Not complicated, living in a nice area, the area I grew up in, clean, friendly, safe, expensive. Right? This is it. Alrighty, guys, I babbled on quite a bit. I'm going to have to go, but I want to read a few more comments here. I love UE advice to people. Thank you. This channel is great. What is that? Edutainment? Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I mean, if it's not fun to learn, like economics is boring as hell, right? I mean, it's like about the bars. It's funny because I love going to the bar and like, people who meet you for the first time, they're like, oh, wow, 152,000 subscribers. That's incredible. What's your channel about? I'm like, oh, it's about macroeconomics. I do it all from my car. And they're like, and you like literally in their head, you can just see the wah, wah, wah. Like they're like, oh, boring, hoping that you did it on something fun, but no, I'm talking economics. It isn't fun, but, I am kind of funny, Yeah, so if you're not debt trapped, you are going to be fine very soon. All right. I wish I knew then what I know now when I was young. Well, everybody kind of says that, but I think I think it's okay not to not, because like everything is a lesson on this planet. Like every person is a teacher. Everything is a lesson. And if I knew what I knew now, and I knew that back in high school, then I don't know if I would necessarily have learned the lesson, right, that got me to understand what it is that I know today. So experience in the lesson is valuable, and I think that's important to do. Oh, I'm going to lose my power here in just a second. Oops. Oh, come on. I am going to, come on, I don't want that. Where is that other super chat? Did I get another super chat that I missed? Let me go check that out. Yeah, it was from David. Thank you so much for the $2. I really appreciate the support, guys. My phone's about ready to die. I didn't charge it up completely, apparently. But that's okay. We're an hour and 10 minutes into this. We got 160 people watching with 116 likes. Thank you so much for being out here today. Again, we were at the beginning of the video talking about interest rate adjustments being the topic of discussion for monetary policy. The interest rate adjustment is not the important tool, it's the communication about it. And again, the expectation of inflation has risen the neutral interest rate, which then moves it ever closer to the Fed funds rate, which means that they don't have to move in order for the economy to be less restricted. So very difficult things to wrap your head around, but once you do, it becomes very clear. And this is what we're trying to discuss on a regular basis here on this channel. Thank you so much for being here. Again, 158 people watching with 121 likes. Please go hit that like button. The YouTube algorithm will love the video. Spread it around for more people to view it. All right. The Theory Fight Club. Thanks, Simon. I can't read this. Thanks, Simon. Take care. Alrighty, guys. Alrighty. You guys have a great evening. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.